Claire, there's something you need to know, Lisa whispered urgently, her eyes darting around the crowded hospital cafeteria. I saw Evan with another woman at the restaurant last night. My heart skipped a beat, and I nearly choked on my salad. What? Are you sure? Lisa nodded, her face etched with concern. I'm positive, Claire. They were intimate. I'm so sorry. I set down my fork, my appetite vanishing. The bustling cafeteria suddenly felt suffocating. Maybe it was a work colleague, I suggested weakly, even as doubt gnawed at my insides. Claire, honey, I know what I saw. It wasn't innocent. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. After 15 years of marriage, could Evan really be cheating on me? We had our problems, sure. Especially with his overbearing parents constantly interfering, but infidelity? It seemed unthinkable. What are you going to do? Lisa asked gently. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I need proof. I can't confront him without evidence. Just then my phone buzzed. A text from Evan. Dinner at my parents' tonight. Don't be late. I groaned inwardly. Another evening of thinly veiled criticism from Marilyn and Henry. But now with this bombshell. How could I face them? I have to go, I told Lisa, gathering my things. Thanks for telling me. I'll figure something out. As I hurried back to the nurse's station, my mind raced. Should I search Evan's phone? Hire a private investigator? The thought of becoming that person, suspicious, paranoid, made me sick. But as I approached the elevator, I caught my reflection in the polished doors. The woman staring back at me looked tired, worried, and far older than her 42 years. When had I become this person? The elevator dinged, and as the doors slid open, I made a decision. Tonight, at dinner, I'd watch Evan closely. And if I saw even a hint of deception, well, two could play at that game. Little did I know, that decision would set in motion a chain of events that would change everything. I couldn't sleep that night, tossing and turning as Lisa's words echoed in my mind. When Evan's alarm went off at 6 a.m., I pretended to be asleep, listening as he shuffled around the room. The moment I heard the shower running, I made my move. Heart pounding, I grabbed Evan's phone from the nightstand. My fingers trembled as I punched in his passcode, our anniversary date. How ironic. I scrolled through his messages, finding nothing suspicious. Just as I was about to give up, I noticed a hidden folder in his photo gallery. With a deep breath, I tapped it open. My world shattered. There, in vivid color, was a photo of Evan with a young, blonde woman. They were kissing passionately, his hand tangled in her hair. The timestamp showed it was taken just 2 days ago. The shower stopped. I quickly replaced the phone and lay back down, my mind reeling. When Evan emerged, towel around his waist, I couldn't contain myself any longer. I sat up abruptly, holding out my own phone with the incriminating photo I'd sent to myself. How could you do this to me, Evan? My voice trembled as I held up the evidence of his betrayal. He froze, color draining from his face. Claire, it's not what you think. Really? I spat. Because it looks like you're kissing another woman. What else could it possibly be? Evan's shoulders slumped. It was a mistake. A moment of weakness. It didn't mean anything. I laughed bitterly. A moment? The timestamp says otherwise. How long has this been going on? He hesitated, and in that pause I knew. This wasn't a one-time thing. Who is she? I demanded. Just someone from work. Claire, please, we can work this out. I love you. The words rang hollow. Before I could respond, Evan's phone buzzed. A text from his mother. Don't forget dinner tonight. And make sure Claire dresses appropriately this time. I felt a fresh wave of anger. Of course, Marilyn had to insert herself into this too. We're not done with this, I said coldly, getting out of bed. But right now, I have to get ready for work. And apparently, I need to find something appropriate to wear to dinner with your parents. As I slammed the bathroom door, I heard Evan sigh heavily. Good. Let him stew in his guilt. Little did I know, dinner with Marilyn and Henry would bring a whole new level of hell to this already nightmarish day. The moment we stepped into Marilyn and Henry's opulent living room, I knew this dinner would be a disaster. Evan's hand on my lower back felt like a brand of betrayal, and I shrugged it off, earning a disapproving glare from Marilyn. "Claire, dear," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I see you managed to find something suitable to wear." I bit my tongue, forcing a smile. "Hello, Marilyn." "Henry." Dinner was a tense affair, with Marilyn dominating the conversation, praising Evan's latest business success while pointedly ignoring my contributions. I pushed my food around the plate, my appetite gone. "So, Claire," Henry finally addressed me, "when are you going to give up that little nursing job of yours and start a family? Evan's not getting any younger, you know." I felt my face flush with anger. "My career is important to me, Henry, and our family planning is none of your business." Marilyn's eyes narrowed. "Well, if you were more attentive to Evan's needs." "Mother," Evan interrupted, but his protest was weak, half-hearted. That's when I snapped. "Attentive to his needs? Like the blonde from work he's been sleeping with." The room fell silent. Evan's face paled, while Marilyn's turned an alarming shade of red. "How dare you accuse my son?" she began, but I cut her off. "I saw the pictures, Marilyn. Your precious boy isn't as innocent as you think." Marilyn turned to Evan, her voice low and dangerous. "Is this true?" Evan's silence was all the confirmation she needed. But instead of admonishing her son, Marilyn rounded on me. "You're nothing but a burden to this family," she sneered, her words cutting deep. "It's no wonder Evan seeks comfort elsewhere. If you were a proper wife." "That's enough," I shouted, standing up so abruptly my chair toppled backward. "I've been a loving wife and daughter-in-law for 15 years. I've endured your criticism, your manipulation, your constant interference. But I'm done. You want to blame me for Evan's infidelity? Fine, but I won't sit here and take it anymore." I turned to Evan, who sat frozen in his chair. "And you're so spineless you can't even stand up to your own parents. Well, enjoy your perfect family. I'm out." As I stormed towards the door, I heard Henry mutter, "Good riddance." I paused, hand on the doorknob, and looked back at the tableau of shocked faces. "You know what? You're right. It is good riddance. To all of you." The door slammed behind me with a satisfying bang. As I walked to my car, tears streaming down my face, I felt a strange mix of despair and liberation. I didn't know what came next, but I knew one thing for certain. I was done being their punching bag. Little did they know, this was just the beginning of my revenge. I sat in my car outside Lisa's apartment, my hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. The events of the past few days replayed in my mind like a nightmarish loop. Evan's betrayal, Marilyn's venom, Henry's dismissal. It was all too much. "I've had enough," I whispered, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and determination. "It's time they all paid for what they've done." I grabbed my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. "Hello?" a familiar voice answered. "Aunt Lillian? It's Claire. I need your help." An hour later, I was sitting in Lillian's cozy living room, pouring out my heart. Marilyn's estranged sister listened intently, her eyes filled with sympathy and a hint of long-buried anger.
"Oh, Claire," she sighed when I finished. "I'm so sorry. Marilyn has always been a manipulative witch, but this is beyond the pale. I don't know what to do," I admitted, feeling lost. "I can't just let them get away with this." Lillian's eyes sparkled with a mischievous glint. "Maybe you don't have to. What if we gave them a taste of their own medicine?" As she outlined her idea, I felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. It was bold, potentially disastrous, but oh so tempting. "Are you sure about this?" I asked, my heart racing. Lillian nodded firmly. "It's time Marilyn and Henry faced the consequences of their actions. And as for Evan, well, he made his bed. Now he can lie in it." Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Evan, "Please come home. We need to talk." I showed it to Lillian, who raised an eyebrow. Perfect timing. This could work in our favor. As I drove home, my mind whirled with possibilities. Could I really go through with this plan? The old Claire would have balked at the idea, always trying to keep the peace. But that Claire was gone, replaced by a woman who'd been pushed too far. Evan was waiting when I walked in, his face a mask of remorse. Claire, I'm so sorry. Please, let's work this out. What if we took that cruise we've been talking about? Just us, away from everything. I froze, my heart pounding. This was it, the opportunity we'd been waiting for. Forcing a smile, I nodded. You know what? I think that's exactly what we need. As Evan's face lit up with relief, I felt a twinge of guilt. But then I remembered the photo on his phone, Marilyn's cruel words, and years of subtle manipulation. No, I thought, steeling myself. They brought this on themselves. Little did Evan know, this cruise would be nothing like he imagined. And by the time it was over, nothing would ever be the same again. We're finally going on that cruise, just us, Evan said, trying to mend fences. My heart pounded with anticipation, but not for the reasons he thought. I forced a smile. That sounds wonderful, dear. As Evan rambled on about the itinerary, my mind raced. This was the perfect opportunity to set our plan in motion. I excused myself and hurried to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. With trembling fingers, I dialed Aunt Lillian's number. It's happening, I whispered. Evan's booked a cruise for us. Excellent, Lillian replied, her voice tinged with excitement. I'll make the arrangements on my end. Are you sure you're ready for this, Claire? I hesitated for a moment, doubt creeping in. Was I really prepared to go through with this deception? But then I remembered Marilyn's sneering face, Henry's dismissive attitude, and Evan's betrayal. I'm ready, I said firmly. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. As Evan packed his suitcase, blissfully unaware, I was making clandestine phone calls and arranging secret meetings with Lillian. The night before our departure, I lay awake, my stomach churning with a mixture of anticipation and dread. There was no turning back now. As we boarded the ship the next morning, Evan squeezed my hand. This is going to be great for us, Claire. A fresh start. If only he knew. We were barely settled in our cabin when there was a knock at the door. Evan opened it, his jaw dropping in shock. Mom? Dad? What are you doing here? Marilyn swept into the room, Henry close behind. Surprise! We thought we'd join you too, lovebirds. Won't this be fun? I feigned surprise, but inside, I was seething. How dare they intrude on our trip? But then I reminded myself, this was all part of the plan. Oh, how wonderful, I managed to say, catching Evan's apologetic glance. As Marilyn prattled on about the ship's amenities, my phone buzzed with a text from Lillian. All set. See you tomorrow. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. Tomorrow, everything would change. The truth would come out, and they would all face the consequences of their actions. As I looked at Evan chatting with his parents, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing, I felt a pang of guilt. But it was quickly overshadowed by determination. They had pushed me too far for too long. It was time for justice. And I was going to make sure they all got exactly what they deserved. The ship's horn blared as we approached what should have been our first port of call. Instead, a dilapidated dock came into view, surrounded by overgrown vegetation and rusted equipment. Claire, what is this place? Marilyn demanded, her voice shrill with alarm. I turned to face them, my smile as cold as ice. Welcome to the truth, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Evan's face paled. Claire, what's going on? Before I could respond, a familiar figure emerged from a nearby shack. Aunt Lillian strode towards us, her chin held high. Lillian? Marilyn gasped. What are you doing here? I'm here to support Claire, Lillian replied calmly, and to witness the long overdue reckoning. I took a deep breath and faced my family. I know about the affair, Evan. I've known for weeks. Evan's jaw dropped, while Marilyn and Henry exchanged panicked glances. But that's not all, I continued, my voice growing stronger. I know about the years of manipulation, the lies, the way you've all conspired to control every aspect of our lives. Now, Claire, Henry began, but I cut him off. No, you've had your say for years. Now it's my turn. I pulled out a folder from my bag. I have proof of everything. The affair, the embezzlement from the family business, the blackmail. All of it. The color drained from their faces as I laid out document after document, photo after photo. You set us up, Evan whispered, realization dawning. I gave you a chance to come clean, I replied, my voice breaking slightly. But you chose to continue lying, even when confronted. Marilyn lunged for the documents, but Lillian stepped between us. It's over, Marilyn. The truth is out. As the full weight of the situation sank in, chaos erupted. Marilyn screamed accusations, Henry tried to bargain, and Evan just stood there, shell-shocked. In that moment, watching my carefully constructed plan unfold, I felt a mix of triumph and despair. This was everything I'd wanted, wasn't it? To see them face the consequences of their actions? But as I looked at the broken family before me, I wondered if the cost of revenge was too high. Had I become just like them in my quest for justice? As doubt began to creep in, Evan suddenly sprang to life, grabbing my arm. You can't do this, Claire. We can work it out. Please. I jerked away, tears stinging my eyes. It's too late, Evan. We're done. With those words, I felt the last threads of my old life snap. There was no going back now. For better or worse, I had set us all on a new path. And as the sun began to set over the desolate dock, I steeled myself for the confrontation to come. The truth was out, but the real battle was just beginning. This is your doing, Claire. Marilyn screamed, her face contorted with rage. But I stood my ground, unyielding. No, Marilyn. This is the result of years of manipulation, lies, and betrayal. By all of you, I shot back, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. The rundown dock had become a battleground. Evan paced frantically, muttering to himself, while Henry tried to reason with Aunt Lillian, who stood firmly by my side. You ungrateful little... Marilyn lunged at me, but Lillian intercepted her. That's enough, Marilyn, Lillian warned. The truth is out. It's time to face the consequences. Evan suddenly whirled on me. How could you do this, Claire? I thought you loved me. His words hit me like a physical blow. Love you? Evan, you betrayed me. You chose your parents and your mistress over our marriage every single time. I made mistakes, but... Mistakes? I laughed bitterly. Embezzlement, infidelity, years of emotional abuse. Those aren't mistakes, Evan. They're choices. Henry stepped forward, his face ashen. Now, let's all calm down. I'm sure we can work this out quietly, as a family. There is no family anymore, I declared, my voice breaking. You made sure of that when you treated me like an outsider for 15 years. As if on cue, we heard sirens in the distance. Panic flashed across their faces. What have you done? Marilyn hissed. I've contacted the authorities, Lillian explained calmly. They're here to investigate the financial irregularities in the family business. Chaos erupted. Marilyn screamed accusations, Henry tried to flee, and Evan crumpled to the ground, head in his hands. In that moment, watching my carefully orchestrated plan unfold, I felt a surge of triumph. But it was quickly followed by a wave of exhaustion and sadness. This was the end of everything I'd known for the past 15 years. As police cars pulled up and officers approached, I turned to Lillian. Is this really justice? I whispered, doubt creeping in. She squeezed my hand. It's the truth, Claire. Sometimes that's the only justice we get. I watched as Evan and Henry were led away in handcuffs, Marilyn trailing behind, still shouting threats and accusations. The family that had once seemed so perfect, so untouchable, was now in shambles. As the dust settled, I stood alone on the dock, the weight of my actions pressing down on me. I had won, but at what cost? The path ahead was uncertain, filled with legal battles and emotional fallout. But as I took a deep breath of the salty air, I felt something else too, a glimmer of hope. For the first time in years, I was free. Free from the lies, the manipulation, the constant pressure to be someone I wasn't. The sun was setting over the water, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. It was the end of one chapter, but perhaps the beginning of something new. Something true. I turned to Lillian, straightening my shoulders. Let's go home, I said. The real work starts now. I'm done with all of you, I stated firmly, zipping up my suitcase. It's time for me to find my own happiness. The words hung in the air of the apartment I'd shared with Evan for 15 years. Now, it felt like a prison I was finally escaping. Evan stood in the doorway, his face a mask of regret and desperation. "Claire, please. We can work this out. I'll change, I promise." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Change? Evan, you had years to change. You chose your parents and your mistress over me time and time again. It's too late. As I moved towards the door, Evan grabbed my arm. "You can't just leave. What about our life together? What about my parents?" I jerked away from him. "Your parents made their bed, Evan. Now they can lie in it. The authorities have all the evidence of the embezzlement. As for our life together, it ended the moment you betrayed me." The sound of the doorbell interrupted us. I opened it to find Lisa standing there, ready to help me move. Her presence gave me strength. "It's over, Evan," I said, my voice steady. "I hope you find peace, but it won't be with me." As Lisa and I carried my bags to her car, I saw Marilyn and Henry watching from their window across the street. Their faces were a mixture of anger and defeat. I felt a twinge of satisfaction, followed by a wave of sadness for the family we could have been. At my new apartment, Lisa helped me unpack. "How are you feeling?" she asked gently. I paused, considering. Relieved. Scared. Free. That night, as I lay in my new bed, in my new life, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The pain, the betrayal, the fight for justice, it had all led to this moment. I thought of Evan, facing the consequences of his actions. Of Marilyn and Henry, their carefully constructed world crumbling around them. Part of me felt guilty for the role I'd played in their downfall. But a stronger part knew I'd done what was necessary. My phone buzzed with a text from Aunt Lillian. "Proud of you, Claire. Here if you need anything." Tears welled up in my eyes, but for the first time in years, they weren't tears of sadness or frustration. They were tears of relief, of hope. As I drifted off to sleep, I realized something profound. The Claire who had entered the storm, meek, accommodating, desperate for approval, was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her worth, who wouldn't compromise her happiness for anyone. Tomorrow, I would wake up and start my new life. There would be challenges, of course. Legal battles, emotional healing, learning to trust again. But for the first time in years, I was excited about the future. I had lost a family, but I had found myself. And that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all.